What government officials may know about top secret programs on the subject.
We've had repeated instances of something operating in the airspace over restricted nuclear facilities, and it's not ours.
They have both deactivated and activated nuclear weapons with both the United States and Russia.
These are otherworldly things that are performing maneuvers that haven't been seen.
The UAP activity surrounding nuclear weapons is not a historic issue. It's an ongoing issue.
Is Marco Rubio about to reveal that aliens exist in our universe? Take a look at this clip over here from Fox News. They're talking to a man named Dan Farah, and in his documentary that's just being released called The Age of Disclosure, he interviews very high government officials and high military officials, and they all claim that they have direct knowledge of the situation and that UFOs are real and they are from out of this world. So let's watch what they talk about in this interview, because one thing was for sure, one thing was very interesting. They said that Marco Rubio is probably the most knowledgeable person in the US government right now on this issue. So let's watch what they have to say in this interview, and then we'll talk about what its implications would mean. But first, hit that subscribe button over there in the corner. We'd love to stay in touch. Check this out.
Tonight, we get a first look at a new documentary on UAPs and what government officials may know about top secret programs on the subject. It features testimony from 34 high-ranking government officials. My colleague Brett Baer speaks with the director and producer of The Age of Disclosure.
We've had repeated instances of something operating in the airspace over restricted nuclear facilities, and it's not ours.
They have both deactivated and activated nuclear weapons with both the United States and Russia.
These are otherworldly things that are performing maneuvers that haven't been seen.
The UAP activity surrounding nuclear weapons is not a historic issue. It's an ongoing issue.
Well, joining us now to talk about his new film, The Age of Disclosure, is director and producer Dan Farah. He says the documentary reveals an 80-year cover-up of non-human intelligent life and a secret war among major nations to reverse engineer advanced technology of non-human origin. The film will be released in select theaters in New York, Washington, and Los Angeles on November 21st. Also available worldwide to purchase and rent on Prime Video. Dan, thanks for being here. You've been working on this for more than 3 years, and you say this is going to be a groundbreaking documentary.
Yeah. I interviewed 34 extremely high-level military, government intelligence officials who all have direct knowledge of this issue. Much of what they know is classified, but in this film, they break their silence on what they can lawfully disclose.
I mean, there's a lot of skepticism, as you know. There's a lot of stigmatism about this issue. But as you're talking to all of these people and you're building these blocks for this movie, you get to the point where it's not a matter of if it's happening or if it's real.
Yeah. So every single person I interviewed made it very clear that it was no longer a question of whether this was a real situation. It's a very real situation.
Humanity is not the only intelligence in the universe.
Humanity is not the only intelligent species.
We are absolutely not alone.
Non-human intelligence exists.
UAPs are real, they're here, and they're not human.
The questions now are, who's controlling these UAP? Where do they come from? And what is their intention?
This sounds, I mean, it's hard for everybody to digest. And an 80-year cover-up with a country that keeps it deep and dark, and it hasn't gotten out. That's the tough part for people to buy into.
Yeah, so a number of the officials in my film make it clear that a long time ago, this topic was moved away from congressional oversight and even away from the oversight of the President of the United States. And there are certain elements within our government and within defense contractors that have really been gatekeeping the knowledge about this topic.
And there are people in this film who are respected in their fields who say they have seen these craft and have seen the recovered non-human bodies.
I have seen with my own eyes non-human craft and non-human beings.
They go on the record about the fact that there have been crashed craft that have been recovered. In some cases, there's been non-human bodies in these craft, they claim. And these are people who are putting their reputation and their names on the line. You know, often you hear people say, show me the evidence. In my opinion, 34 extremely credible people putting their name and reputation on the line is the best evidence, because we live at a time where you can put a video or a photo out and half the people out there will say it's fake or
Because
AI.
AI and everything else. The title is Age of Disclosure. And do you think that this is going to start something bigger? The premise of this is that there is a race to reverse engineer what has been recovered by different countries, essentially competing against one another.
Yeah. So one of the big reveals in the film that a number of the interview subjects share is that elements of the U.S. government are in a high-stakes secret Cold War race with adversarial nations like China and Russia to reverse engineer technology of non-human origin.
The first country that cracks the code on this technology will be the leader for years to come.
China has established its own version of a UAP task force.
You think for a second that they wouldn't consider using it to achieve their ends of domination?
This is similar to the Manhattan Project. This is the atomic weapon on steroids.
We won the atomic race, and we used the bomb to end World War II, and we became the definitive superpower for the next 100 years as a result. The fear here is that if another nation wins this race, it could really change the lay of the land in terms of power.
But for the people who are still skeptical, still can't get their head around it, they're going to watch this. Maybe they'll have their eyes opened. But many might ask, why now? Why is it happening now?
So for a very long time, the public, Congress, and even the president have been kept out of the loop on this subject. In the last few years, senior members of Congress, senior members of the administration, thanks to whistleblowers, have found out what's been going on. And they are now in pursuit of the truth for themselves and for the American people.
Even presidents have been operating on a need-to-know basis, but that begins to ramp out of control.
It's not acceptable to have secret parts of government that no one ever sees.
I think it's only a matter of time at this point before we have a sitting president step to the microphone and have the biggest moment a leader can possibly have, which is telling all of humanity that we're not alone in the universe and that the United States intends to lead the way.
Could it be President Trump?
I think it could be. I think Rubio is one of the most informed people in the United States with regard to this topic. And right now he's our Secretary of State and our National Security Advisor. And I know that he considers this an extremely important topic.
If you were to say what's one thing that people take out of this hour, obviously the bombshell of what all of these people are saying, but where do you think it goes from here? There's such a stigma around talking about this, and people joke about it. This seems like it takes it to a different place.
In our country, we have this very antiquated stigma around the topic. If someone said, hey, there's this constant terrorist threat, terrorists are penetrating the airspace or our nuclear weapon sites, who would laugh at that? It makes no sense.
Right. November 21st, it comes out.
What does Judaism say about extraterrestrial life? The truth of the matter is this discussion has been made already since the Middle Ages and even before. But really the early philosophers in the Middle Ages, starting with Rabbi Chazdoi Kreshkash, was already open to the idea of extraterrestrial life. Even before him, in the days of Maimonides and days of the Rambam, he spoke about the idea of consciousness existing not only on Earth, but even that the celestial objects, the planets and the stars themselves, that they have a certain degree of consciousness. Now, Rabbi Chazdoi Kreshkash, he goes into the idea that we are open to the idea of life outside of the Earth. And he brings several sources that could even support this idea. For example, in the Psalms, in Psalms 145, it says, Malchutcha, Malchut Kol Olamim, that God, your kingship, is a kingship amongst all times. Olamim can be read as all times, as often read as all times, but it can also be read as Olamim, as worlds. Your kingdom is a kingship of all worlds. We, instead of interpreting it in the spiritual sense only, we can interpret it in the physical sense as well. There's other verses and ideas that are brought from the Hebrew Bible to support that point. Rabbi Chazdoi Kreshkash's student, Rabbi Yosef Albo, disagreed with his teacher. He said, if you look at the Torah text, if you look at the biblical text, there is a certain centrality on earth to human beings. There's a certain anthropic, human-centeredness of the Torah, and that excludes any other life out there. Kabbalist Rabbi Eliyahu Horowitz, who wrote in the Sefer HaBris about this very topic, he sort of reconciles the two. What he writes is that the caveat for there being life out there could be life out there, but the caveat is that they wouldn't have free will. Whatever the creatures out there would be, they wouldn't have free will. When the Bible teaches at the beginning of Genesis that God created the human being, B'Tselem, in his image, and each person is created in the image of God, that is a reference to free will. All of the commentaries say this is a reference to our free will, the ability to make moral choices. This is what distinguishes us from the animals, and this is even what distinguishes us from the angels. In fact, spiritually speaking, angels and animals are pretty much the same thing. They can't move past their natural tendencies, their natural abilities. They can't transcend themselves. They do sort of what they're programmed to do. So whether we're talking about aliens, robots, AI, or animals, all of them just do what they're pre-programmed to do. And so the concept of making a moral choice is something unique to humanity. So whether there are creatures out there or not, that is theologically irrelevant. It'd be interesting. We'd all be reading the papers and watching the news and seeing what's going on. But as far as theology is concerned, I'd still keep Sabbath that week, would still keep kosher, still put on my tefillin and pray every morning. All of the theological implications would be exactly the same, because whatever creature is out there would be less than the human being in its spiritual capacities. There's a reason in the Bible that when angels are depicted in prophecy, oftentimes they're depicted as animals, right? The idea of Ezekiel's chariot, for example, when it talks about the different heads of the different animals, these are a reference because the spiritual essence of an animal and the spiritual essence of an angel are the same, that they both don't have free will. They're both spiritually on the same plane. And so the same thing would be applicable to alien life or interdimensional life or whatever else would be out there. Again, fascinating, interesting, super cool. However, not theologically significant that would change anything in our beliefs. There's a great story of Dr. Velvel Green, who was working in NASA's exobiology program. And he became a religious, an observant Jew, and wrote into the Lubavitcher Rebbe, should he continue working for NASA in their exobiology program, in their search for extraterrestrial life. And the Rebbe responded, not in the way you might expect a religious leader to respond. He said, no, keep going. Why limit God? Why would we limit God and say that there can't be life out there? You should continue to explore, because that could only bring about further the glory of God in this world. So we'll see what happens with all of this revelation and disclosure. What do you think about extraterrestrial life? I'd love to hear your comments below. And if you like this content overall, hit that subscribe button over there in the corner. We'd love to stay in touch. Take care.